welcome to another edition of Flea Market Fantasy, the world's second greatest Bronze Age era comic book podcast. Joining me, as always, is new Michael, Kevin Jack.
I am here, and if you like a show where one of the hosts can't pronounce wolf the correct way, the right place.
What a creep. So, tell the kids, we should say it's week 4 of SHOCKtober?
Yeah, that's right. 4 of 5, so we still got one more to go.
One more to go. We're going to close out with a bang.
All right.
But, this is where we only do horror books for the month of October to celebrate the Halloween and whatnot. So, Jank, why don't you tell the people what you picked for this week?
Yeah, so we did 2 Frankenstein books. We did a Dracula book last week, vampires at least, with Morbius. And Satana, who was kind of the headliner there, but she isn't even really a vampire in a book called Vampire Tales, but, whatever.
She's a succubus.
Yeah, it's similar. So I figured we would do some werewolves, with a Judge Dredd story from 1983 called Cry of the Werewolf that was printed over the course of 7 of their little Prague magazines, whatever they.
Yeah, I forget, because I was doing research on this, and why do they call them Progs exactly?
I don't know.
Yeah, I forget.
Progressive, maybe? It's a progressive storyline going across each month? I don't know.
Yeah, so this is Judge Dredd, and he turns into a werewolf.
Yeah. Sounds good. Put that out.
We'll be discussing that this week. But before we begin, let's remind everybody, if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. We're up to 291 subscribers last I saw.
Holy hell. Closing in on 3.
Yeah.
It's headway.
The rate is accelerating.
Yeah.
Subscribers. Let's see if we can keep this.
Like my womb.
Quickening. All right. And also, I have a book out there called Monkey Flip. Detective.
Highly recommend it.
Yeah, look at you. Always the shill. I appreciate it. But all right, let's get to Judge Dredd. Now, we did a Judge Dredd already on this show, and it was early on in your run, I believe, right?
I think so. That sounds about right.
And I seem to recall it was the first YouTube episode for us that actually did something.
Hey.
Yeah, hundreds of people viewed it. So that's rare for us. So it was a big thing. Now, those numbers could have been cooked by certain things, but it still counts. So we had success with Judge Dredd. Let's see what happens the second time around. But again, Judge Dredd was created by writer John Wagner and artist Carlos Esquerra, and his first appearance was in issue 2 of the British weekly anthology 2000 AD in 1977. And that's technically what we're reading here today. These are installments from 2000 AD, and then they were collected into a trade paperback, Cry of the Werewolf.
Yeah. I'm assuming this 2000 AD had more stories. It was kind of like Vampire Tales. It's a bunch of stories. Okay. Otherwise, they're very short books.
Yeah, they came out every week, and the Judge, each story would be about 6 pages, I think, usually.
Yeah, it seems about right.
Each installment, I should say. And like you mentioned, this one lasted between issues 322 and 328, and that was in 1983.
Yeah.
And Wagner and Grant were the writers here, and the artist is Steve Dillon, who is a fellow we've never talked about on the show. We'll talk about him later when we get done.
That was kind of one of the reasons I wanted to pick this. Once I saw he was doing the art, I'm like, oh, we definitely got to do it now. I know we never talked about him before.
Yeah, so we did Wagner and Grant. Go back and listen to the other Judge Dredd. You'll get all their background. And would you like to summarize what Judge Dredd is for the people?
Sure. It's set in the far future. There's been some kind of, apocalyptic type events. The Earth, I believe, has kind of coalesced themselves into these mega cities, which are like giant skyscraper cities. There's kind of building upwards and condensing things. And then the large chunks of the Earth are just kind of desolate, desert or apocalyptic wastelands, from what I understand. The one we did before, I believe he was up on the moon or somewhere like that. Like
he was on the moon.
New colonization that had started, and he was kind of policing that. But basically, he's still on Earth here in Mega City 1, and the judges have become kind of judge, jury, and executioner. They kind of, they act police, but then they also act as judges, and they pass sentences on people and just execute people, essentially, if they deem them worthy of being executed.
Yeah, so they're like cops that can just shoot and kill you, and everything's cool.
Yeah.
No worries.
The ultimate authority.
Yeah, and what's his little catchphrase? I am the law, or something, right?
Yeah.
And
that's right.
And it happens in this issue. One of the other judges, but they like come upon some criminals and they say, and your sentence is death or whatever, and then he kills them.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, sometimes they'll sentence you to like the ISO cubes instead if if it's not that severe, but a lot of the times it's death.
Yeah. And he wears a wacky helmet and shoulder pads, it looks like. And but of course there's a Sylvester Stallone movie, and I think around 95-ish, somewhere around there, right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Did you ever see that?
I
can't remember.
Movie. There is a good Cure song in it though. Dredd song. Check that out.
I'm not watching that movie ever then. I was going to say we should watch it on the LCS, but nope. That's out. So forget that. Is there anything else we should mention about Judge Dredd? This is probably
we should mention there is a much better movie that came out much later on.
Like
2014 or somewhere around there. Okay. Remember the Carl Urban Dredd movie?
I do remember.
Significantly better. Yep. Yeah, much more well received by people who did see it, but unfortunately I just don't think enough people saw it, so it never got a sequel. But it seems like it's got high ratings, and everybody who did see it wants them to keep making them, but so far no luck.
Yeah. And I recall the first time we did Judge Dredd, we both enjoyed it. And the thing I remember liking about it is there's a couple little stories. I think it was like maybe 4 different stories in that one that we read before.
Right.
Because basically they released a comic book version, and they would collect some of the 2000 AD stories and they'd put them into one issue, kind of. And then they published that from I can't even remember who was the publisher of that.
Yeah, it wasn't one of the big ones, that's for sure.
Yeah. But anyway, what I enjoyed about it was actually very funny and smart and kind of like satirical almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one, not so much.
Well, there were little moments, but yeah, not quite as much. This is more just trying to be a spooky story about werewolves, I guess. Not so much with the social satire. And
you said we only had to read installments 4 through 7 because you were trying to help us out.
Yeah.
And,
reading the back half essentially.
Yeah. So maybe we should have read the whole thing because 4 through 7 wasn't really. Now I could have taken it upon myself to go back and read the whole thing, but nope. I always like to cut corners. So
that's right. Same here.
I'm not doing it. But all right, why don't you describe the cover for us?
Okay, so we're reading from a trade here, but I did send you basically a different version of that. Basically the 2000 AD Prague number 328 cover, which is kind of where the trade paperback gets its actual cover. I figured this would be a little bit better to go off of than the trade itself. But we got it says Prague 328 up in the corner. There's like a weird little digital readout type thing, very futuristic. And it says in orbit every Monday, 2000 AD featuring Judge Dredd. Pretty cool futuristic font there. I like that. It's 20, pounds, I guess, Earth.
Pence.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 20 pounds would be very expensive.
That's a lot, yeah. And then it's kind of a, like an orange to yellowish green gradient kind of background. And, we got Judge Dredd's big shot of his face and, a shot of his hand sticking up. And he's saying, I am the law. and you see his hand is turning into a werewolf hand, just ripping right out of his gloves, and it says a big old rip.
Yeah, and it looks like his chin's a little starting to transform as well, a little bit, maybe.
He might just be very hairy. It's hard to tell.
And apparently, I Googled it up while you were describing the cover, and the 2000 AD series, the individual stories were called progs, short for programs, not issues.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And the unique terminology was adopted by the creators, likely due to the futuristic and science fiction themes of the comic.
Oh, okay. I like that then. If it's supposed to be futuristic, not just this is some weird British thing I don't understand.
I was going to say like Benny Hill, but everything should be like Benny Hill. Everyone.
Can I use some more saxophone music?
Yes. So, yeah, it's a pretty simple cover, but it gets the job done. Yeah. And it's Steve Dillon's drawing that cover as well.
Yeah. Very good looking cover. I like it.
When we open this up, basically, since we're only reading the 4 through 7 of this thing, can you tell us what basically happened in installments 1 through 3?
Yeah, I didn't read them, but it's clear to get the gist of it. Basically, people have started turning into werewolves in Mecha City 1 here, and it's become a problem. And so the judges, Judge Dredd included, have been rounding these people up, and they've locked up a bunch of werewolves in the basement of the old police station there.
Yeah, and they're trying to figure out why or, and to cure them of this. So they have some scientist guy named Cassidy.
Yeah.
Who's working on a cure. And
he's trying to study it, figure out what the problem is first. And he's like, we found a new radioactive chemical in the bodies of the werewolves, a substance capable of bringing about dramatic changes in body chemistry. It's identifiable by the bright greenish glow. I call it Cassidium. Named it after himself. Get it?
Oh, what a joke. So he thinks he has a solution here, and they want to send Judge Dredd out into where are they? They're in Mega. I'm confused about the world of this. They're like,
yeah. Essentially, it looks like they built Mega City 1 on top of what used to be New York City. Like that all kind of must have been a giant earthquake, kind of like they mentioned in Demolition Man. A big earthquake came and took down the city, and all that's underground now. But they built a bigger city on top of it, kind of like a skyscraper city. But
there's kind of like walls, right? Like an entrance into the city. So they let Judge Dredd out into that world. I don't know. Do they call it the underworld or the undercity or what do they call it?
Yeah, I think they call it the undercity, something like that. Yeah.
So it's kind of like just a no man's land of chaos and bad folks.
Yeah, they try to keep things in check in Mega City 1, but out there it's just the wilds.
So he has to go out there, and his boss says, "Hey, you take care of this whole werewolf problem," and they give him like a canister of this antidote, and they send him out on his little motorcycle. What does he call his motorcycle again? Like this is me just quizzing Jank randomly about Judge Dredd. Isn't it like the Lawbringer or something like that, or the Law?
Something like that, yeah.
We'll find it as we go. But yeah, he rides this big motorcycle, and he's taking his
the agent they gave him is this container contains something that if you put it in this Cassidium, it'll turn it into harmless algae. So he's got to find the source and throw this stuff in there.
Yes. So Judge Dredd proceeds to find the source and throw the thing in there.
Spoiler alert.
That's exactly what happens. And that's the story. So I don't know. But first he goes in installment 4 here. He gets his mission. He goes off in the city and he's tracking. He tracks a werewolf, and he finds the werewolf all chained up to like a box car or something. And there's a bunch of robots that captured the werewolf.
Yeah. Yep, they got him chained to the front.
A bunch of filthy robots. And I guess these robots, they've rebelled against man, I guess, from what I was reading here. And they've kind of they've controlled sections of the Undercity or whatever. So they're kind of like a gang roaming this undercity. And, normally you think, well, at least they caught that werewolf, But Judge Dredd, he says, hey, you filthy rabbits. I want that werewolf. And they get into a big fight with the rabbits.
I did like that we get to see a shot of, Times Square here. The old, rundown, what's left of Times Square. And there's a movie theater showing Rocky 37. I'm like, I would love to live in that world where there's 37 Rocky movies.
Jank would be so happy. But Judge Dredd shoots a lot of the rabbits, and he frees he shoots the chains off the werewolf, and the werewolf goes running away. And because Judge Dredd, he wanted to free him so he could follow the werewolf back to his other werewolf buddies.
Yep, because they're probably by the source. Makes sense.
So the rabbits were kind of mad there, but they're like, yeah, whatever, And, we're rabbits. What do we care?
Yeah.
So he's tracking the werewolf fella, and look, it looks like Central Park. There's a sign there that says Central Park.
Yeah, that's right.
And he has a little exclamation that he says, "Drock."
I always love future slang. Unless you overuse it and you can't understand any of it, but if you just throw in like a weird swear word every once in a while, that's cool.
I like Drock. Yeah. So what does he find there, Jank, when he finally tracks down this werewolf?
Well, it looks like the werewolves are getting ready for an orgy. Like those werewolf orgy. Yeah. They're all just, sitting there having a rally. It's kind of like the beginning of the Warriors where all the gangs get together and they're all, gathered around Cyrus. It's kind of like that. This white werewolf is clearly the leader and he's kind of leading them in a big chant, a big, howl at the moon.
Yeah, we should mention he freed a white werewolf and then he followed him back. And you can tell I'm taking great pains to say werewolf all the time.
I appreciate it.
The way we say it here in Western PA is werewolf. Werewolf. But
Jank hate the letter L.
Jank makes fun of me. So I'm trying really hard to say werewolf. All right. And so they're having this big meeting. It's kind of it's like a pep rally or something for the werewolf.
Yeah, exactly.
They're getting
the cheerleaders are about to come out, start shooting t-shirt cannons.
High school pep rallies were very odd. I remember, even as a child, sitting in the crowd during these pep rallies thinking, this is so odd. What are we doing? But anyway.
Yeah. It got you out of class, though. That was the only good thing.
That was the only good thing. So all this Cassidium, or whatever it's called, it's just like in a big bucket, like a big barrel.
Yeah, it's kind of just like a little lake. It's kind of formed of it. Yeah.
And
maybe a puddle.
So Judge Dredd, he goes and he throws that canister he has in the air above it, and then he shoots the canister, boom, spreads all the antidote into the Cassidium, algae's forming, and mission's accomplished. So then he just starts murdering a bunch of werewolves.
Yep. Apparently he's not as good a shot as you would think, because he's like, there's no way I can get it to there without it. He drives into them first and starts firing the bike cannons. Like, shouldn't you have thrown the thing, shot it, and done all that first, and then maybe see if they notice and then try to get away? Like, why'd you get so close?
I think he just wanted to kill some werewolves.
That's fair.
That's all he wanted to do. So now we're up to, what part are we up to now? Part 6 of the story. And we should mention, the first pages of each section, it's a 2-page spread, like a wide, colorful shot.
Yep.
And
the rest of the book is black and white, but the first page of each part very much stands out because it's like full color.
So this section opens up with a big spread of Judge Dredd shooting werewolves in the face.
Yeah.
Just chucking them around.
Great. One of them's jumping at him. He just kind of like puts his arm up and tosses him over slightly.
But the white werewolf, while all his other werewolf buddies are getting slaughtered, he runs off into the woods there. And Judge Dredd, man, he just has a lot of ammunition. and he's just murdering all these werewolves. And then he goes after the other, the leader there, and the werewolves who are left behind, they just start feasting on their buddies.
Yeah. We do get a shot here where you can kind of get, one of the things Judge Dredd has is his gun has different types of ammunition, and he can like cycle through them by like voice commands. So he says, high explosive, and it turns into this, like, like grenade essentially.
Oh, okay.
Ammunition. So that's pretty cool. They did that well in the Carl
I thought he was just giving commentary on how he's murdering these things. But I mean, he has to go back and murder those other werewolves still, right? I mean,
yeah, but I guess he does have a plan for that later on.
Yeah, that is true. Because it can be spread by bites and everything like a vampire. So.
Yeah, so you can't let them live.
Yeah.
Got to cut this problem off at the source.
So he's tracking down the werewolf leader, and the werewolf leader jumps out at him and bites him on the arm.
He sure does.
And he bites him a couple times, actually. So. Yeah. And then he chucks him.
Judge Dredd's like, I got an hour before I'm going to turn. Like, he bit you a couple of times. That might cut the, the time down.
And I think those are just general estimates, probably. They could probably depend on a lot of factors: the amount of toxin in your blood, your heartbeat. Like probably goes through your system faster when you're fighting werewolves.
Yep.
So, but he's like,
your blood alcohol content. Like cousin Brandon's probably going to turn into a werewolf any second.
But he says he's got like an hour to act here, and he says, I only got an hour, so I got to kill this werewolf, kill all the other werewolves, and kill myself in the next hour. Because that's the only way to stop this. So
the white werewolf is closing in on him, and he's like, Whitey's coming in for the kill. Figures me for Judge Steak. He grabs a piece of the fence behind him, pointy piece of the fence, and he's like, only one stake you're going to get, Fido, through the heart, and just rams it through his chest.
Yeah, because the white werewolf had thrown him into the fence and it knocked off one of the spikes. So he picked it up and stabs him.
It's a great shot. It's kind of like, Bullseye and Electro there.
Yeah, very much so. I wonder if that's what he was going for there. Yeah. And we should mention, I think Steve Dillon, he's only 21 years old here when he's drawing.
Yeah, it's very early. Yeah.
All right, so that werewolf's dead, but like we said, Judge Dredd knows he only has an hour. And where does he take them to exactly? The rad pit.
Yeah, there's just a bunch of nuclear waste, I guess, on the ground there. It's very radioactive. He's like, oh, anything falls in there, it's gonna, just burn up. So this will be a good place for my trap.
And again, he has a trap. He has a plan, and it works perfectly. We'll talk about that a little bit later when we get into this. But the
Law Master, that's what he called the bike.
Yeah, his bike. So he tells his Law Master there, he programs it to emit a werewolf howl.
Yep. To imitate the white werewolf's cry, basically.
I guess he had recorded it earlier or something when they were at that pep rally. So
yep. Don't let interlopers into your pep rally. They'll steal your mascot or steal your cries.
Yeah. So the old Law Master, it starts broadcasting the howl. It attracts all the remaining werewolves to the rad pit, and we can see that Judge Dredd, he's starting to turn. He's drooling. His teeth are getting sharp. His face is getting a little furry, and then we go to the last installment of the story. And he props up the dead white werewolf on his Law Master on like the middle of a bridge, a little walkway above the rad pit.
Yeah.
So all the werewolves come onto the bridge, and they're like, "Hey, what's with Jimmy there? He looks dead on that motorcycle.
Seems to be howling, but he's like asleep. Yeah. I don't know what's going on here."
So they're going to check on Jimmy. Judge Dredd blows up that bridge, and all the werewolves fall into the rad pit and die. Yep. Mission accomplished, except he still has to kill himself.
Yep. There's one problem. He's now fully werewolf, so he ain't gonna do that.
Yeah.
He no longer wants to. He no longer cares about that. He just wants to go out there and eat something.
So he's roaming the Undercity there, and there's some ne'er-do-wells, and they've got like sticks and spears, and they're looking to rob somebody, and they set up a little like a tiger trap there in the street, put some cardboard over a hole, and Judge Dredd falls into the trap, and they're about to like rob them, I guess, and they're poking them with their sticks, and they're like, "Hey, it's a giant werewolf. What are we gonna do here?" He's kind
of lucky that they didn't put like they clearly have pointy sticks. Like, lucky they didn't put those in the pit.
Yeah, it used to be the move back in the day in the old movies and stuff. There'd be sharp spikes in the pit too. But so they just have him down there, and they're about to what do they say they're going to do to him exactly?
They're like, we can't steal from a werewolf like that. He's just going to eat us. He's like, at least we can stick him, have us some fun. They're just going to poke at him down there, basically.
Yes.
Get them all real pissed off.
It's a real good night out with the boys. Hey, fellas, let's catch us a werewolf and poke him with sticks. So
then we'll go see Rocky 37 again.
So we like to have fun here in the Undercity. But then another judge shows up.
Yeah.
Judge Prager or something his name is? Something like that.
I get the impression he's supposed to be like an older guy who was kind of put out to pasture. They say he's taken the long walk, which I'm assuming means, you've gotten too old and then you just get sent out here to live out your life in this horrible, horrible wasteland.
And I guess this is actually his first appearance in Judge Dredd's storylines.
Oh.
Like, from what I read, this is like his first appearance, and he just pops up. Because it almost seems like, he's an established character. But
yeah.
Apparently not. And he just wanders upon the pit. He sees the werewolf down there. He's like, he kills those criminals first. He says, the sentence is death. And he guns them down. And then he looks in the pit and he goes, there's a werewolf. Well, I guess I got to kill him too.
Switching to high explosive. And he's like, wait a minute. That werewolf's wearing a judge's uniform.
Yeah.
That badge, Dredd.
So now
he does know him. He's like, can that thing be Joe Dredd? So he knows his first name.
Joe Dredd. So now he has, he decides to try and capture the werewolf, and he has stum gas.
Yeah, not stun gas, but stum gas. STUMM.
Yeah, the extra M is for savings. I don't know what that means, but it's a stum gas. And,
I don't know.
It knocks out the werewolf. And then he hoists him out of the hole there, and he chains him up. So he binds his snout so he won't be able to bite him. And he throws him over his shoulder, and he walks all the way back to Mega City or the city gate.
Yeah, I guess they don't let you keep your motorcycle after you retire.
So he knocks on the door, and they say, "Hey, who goes there?" And he says, "It's Judge Prager. Took the long walk 4 years back. Got something for you." And they open the door and they say, "It's a judge, all right. What do you got for us, Prager?" And this. And he drops Judge Dredd on the ground there, And a Dredd. So the werewolves got him. I better get him to med bay quick. Yeah. There's a couple
and they ask him, "Hey, Prager, how's things down there anyway?" And he just says, "Grim."
Yeah, that's pretty great.
Yep.
And, he just turns, and they slam the doors on him, and he goes walking back into the Undercity or whatever.
Yeah. Some thanks he gets.
Yeah. So now we see Judge Dredd. He's waking up, and he sees a judge guy. He recognizes him, and he's like, "Hey, what's going on there?" And he's like, "Hey, yeah, you're not a werewolf. That whole thing lasted 1 page." So, right?
Yep. That was my one critique of the story is, boy, did they wrap this thing up quick.
Yeah. And Cassidy here came up with the cure. Guy's a genius. Only trouble was he never lets you forget it. And then why don't you read Judge Dredd's last line?
Oh, yeah. The final joke here. Well, then Judge Dredd says, "Well, you got my thanks anyway, Cassidy. I don't mind admitting, for a while down there, things got pretty hairy.
That's how the story ends.
Yeah, I definitely wrapped it up a little too quickly for my taste.
You think?
Considering last time he left them, there was no cure at all and no hope of a cure. It was just, let's kill the werewolves and stop any more from being created. And now they're just like, oh yeah, it's easily curable.
All right, so here's my problem with this. And again, we need to be a little forgiving here because these guys, they're just making pages and trying to hit deadlines. All right, this is a weekly thing. They're churning this stuff out. So it's really impressive that Steve Dillon, he drew every installment of this. You know, putting on a weekly thing. That's really hard to do. And again, he's 21 at the time. But in terms of writing, I just spoke specifically about this thing in my author newsletter, list.19books.com, because I know Jank reads every newsletter I send out.
I do. I pour over it.
And he takes extensive notes. But I've been talking about plotting lately. And one of the ways you can make your stories interesting with plots and whatnot is you have your characters make a plan, and then when they go to execute the plan, it fails horribly.
Okay.
And then it causes that, because plotting is cause and effect. So if something doesn't go as planned, it's like, well, then what happens now? And so readers will instantly be thinking, oh, shoot, that didn't go the way it was expected. Well, what is he going to do now? So they'll be turning the pages to see, how you adapt and change, and, everything springs off of that. And so here in this issue, they have a plan, and they execute it perfectly. Nothing goes wrong until he does get bitten. So there you go. Yeah. That's pretty good.
Then we got some stakes of, is he going to get it done before he turns? And
but
he does manage to get that done, but then he does turn, and so that becomes the issue is, I guess now he's just going to go out there murdering people. This is bad.
Yes, but then, nothing comes of it. Nothing happens. He falls in a hole, gets taken out of the hole, and cured.
Yeah.
He doesn't murder
That's
anybody.
a little bit too easy. I can see that. But I think if you want to keep him, if you don't want the judges to put him down, he can't kill anyone. Otherwise, they're going to murder him.
Yeah, I know, but it's just there's no payoff to him becoming a werewolf. Nothing.
Yeah.
It's a complete waste of time. But probably a better way to do this would have been sending him out into the Undercity there with the little Cassidium. Here's your plan. You got to throw it in. Then he gets there and he goes to use the Cassidium, and maybe the canister gets broken or something, and he never gets it to there where it has to go.
Oh.
So now you're like, oh shoot, now what does he do? And then he has to figure something else out to try and defeat these werewolves. And maybe then you would just do the bit with the rad pit and everything. And
well, that still leave the Cassidium there, though. He's not a scientist. He can't whip up another dose of that stuff.
Yeah, I agree, but it would make it more interesting. Because the whole Cassidium threat is here and gone in one page, and then the werewolf is here and gone in one page, and there's nothing interesting here. Everything happens exactly as it's supposed to happen, and it's like, oh, okay. So, but if he becomes,
I'd say the one twist is he was obviously planning to kill himself, once he killed all the werewolves, but he didn't have a chance to do that. That's where the plan kind of went south, and
But again, that would be fine, but there is no consequence of that act because nothing happened. Now, interestingly enough, if you read, did you keep reading through the back of this?
No.
Okay, so I guess what they did, at some point, they did something called Deviations, Judge Dredd, and it was like a one-shot deal where it's basically a what if, and they explored what if he wasn't cured of becoming a werewolf.
Nice.
And so they made a story based on that. So in that version of the story, when he gets back to the megacity, Cassidy has been murdered during some sort of a riot or something. So he never had a chance to make the cure. So now Judge Dredd is stuck being a werewolf, and then they explore that alternative version of the story. And that would have been interesting, but
again, that kind of, works better in a what if where you don't have to keep coming up with stories every week.
But just in this, it's just too straight ahead, and there's no payoff for him becoming a werewolf. It lasts one page, and then he's cured, and then
that is true. Yeah, it would have been nice if it could have lasted a little bit, or at least there was some, maybe at least if this issue ends with, maybe he won't get cured, but you cured in another couple issues or something.
Maybe he is murdering people in Undercity. Prayer comes off upon him. He has a fight with Prager. Prager realizes it's Dredd. He doesn't want to like execute him because it's Dredd. They have so he tries to save him, and then everything. Just make it something interesting, you know? I don't know. Anything would have been better.
That's true. It's like if we talked about Spider-Man growing the 6 arms last week. Like if that had gotten cured within 2 pages, it kind of loses. Nobody would remember that story.
Yes. I guess when I heard this was a trade paperback, I was like, oh, this story must be really something then. You know, they collected it into its own trade paperback, but it's not really. Now, we talked about Wagner and Alan Grant before, but Steve Dillon, he was born in 1962 in London, and sadly he passed away in 2016 at the age of 54. He died of appendicitis.
I remember when that happened. I was like, this guy didn't seem like he was that old. Like that one definitely threw me for a loop. Like, you know, you're used to some of these older guys dropping, but yeah, that one was crazy.
Yeah, his appendix ruptured and not so good. So that is very sad. He got his first professional gig at 16 when he drew a story for Marvel UK's Hulk Weekly, and he later did a Nick Fury strip for the Marvel UK people. And then in the 1980s, he drew something called Warrior and for Doctor Who magazine. And we've actually done a Doctor Who magazine on here, thanks to Mike Ale, that jerk. Had to do that. And then he did a bunch of Judge Dredd stories for 2000 AD. He did a whole bunch of them. And in 1988, he co-founded the comic magazine Deadline, which introduced a lot of independent and underground creators to mainstream audiences. Have you ever heard of Deadline?
Nope.
I hadn't either, but apparently it has quite the reputation for being like a groundbreaking thing, I guess. So, then he did work for DC's Vertigo imprint. He was the main artist on Hellblazer from issues 63 to 83 in 1993-94. I think he did every issue from that span except for one. And then he did the first 66 issues of Preacher.
That's right.
From 1995 to 2000. So was Preacher a spinoff of Hellblazer? Or?
Was that also Vertigo?
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Tell the kids who Hellblazer is again. Like what the? It's
That was the John Constantine Hellblazer. Yeah. Supernatural, you know, kind of occult kind of detective guy.
Then over at Marvel, he did some work over there in the 2000s, including Wolverine Origins, issue 1 through 25.
Yeah. I remember that.
2006 through 2008. Then he did Thunderbolts, issue 1 through 6, and issue 12 in 2013.
Well, before all that, I think the one that made him big was in like the late 90s. He was the artist for Garth Ennis's Punisher run.
Yeah, he was buddies with Garth Ennis, and I think they may have teamed up on Preacher maybe as well or something. Yep. I can't remember.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, I skipped that Punisher, but then he did the Punisher 1 through 6 in 2016, right? When he
Yeah. He also did the one version of the Thunderbolts that had the Punisher on the team, so he was very connected to the Punisher, clearly.
Yeah, I never read any of his stuff at all, but I was aware of him because when I was getting back into the comics, I had myself one of them Marvel subscriptions or whatever. Marvel, what do they call that? Marvel Universe subscription, where you could read any book from Marvel.
Yeah, Marvel Digital or whatever it was called.
So when I was flipping through trying to catch up on all these books I had missed out on in the 2000s there, I did encounter him, but I don't think I ever read any of his stuff. But it sounds like you're way more familiar with him.
Yeah, that Punisher run that he did is amazing. I really loved his art. It was very cool looking, very different, especially with the coloring they were doing for it. It was very, I don't know, just very bold, and it looked great. All of his people, you know, kind of have similar faces, but it looks so good that you're like, I don't really care. It looks great. I love it.
I don't know how to, all right, full transparency here. I remember when I saw the Punisher stuff, I was like, yeah, I don't like this art at all. I wasn't a fan of it. Because it's kind of like his people were almost cartoony, but realistic at the same time. Like it was in between thing.
It was a mix I liked. I was definitely into it. I'm not gonna say he's like one of my top 11 artists or anything like that, but he's good.
Yeah, like, again, I didn't read any of the stuff. I just saw images here and there. So I'm sure the storytelling was what made it as well. Yeah. And but I think in this book he did a really good job. You know, especially 21. Like, it's very impressive. And
honestly, the black and white stuff looked even better than the color stuff in here. Like, the werewolves looked even cooler in black and white. Like, the line work was just so nice and so bold, and I really, really liked it.
Yeah, black and white comics are pretty awesome usually, just because you know, the heavy inks. And so.
I mean, Judge Dredd, where he was stabbing the white werewolf right through the chest. That was so good looking.
Yeah. Yeah, I really liked his art here. Anything else come to mind when you think of Steve Dillon?
Mostly, yeah, like you mentioned, that Wolverine Origins run. I remember that for sure.
So what was that? Was that like Weapon X and all that kind of stuff they did? Or like, what was that?
That was kind of, they did Wolverine Origin, which of course was where they got into his past, and it was like a 6-issue limited series. And I think they were riding so high off of that they're like, let's keep this going, and we'll do an ongoing book called Wolverine Origins. And it kind of, you know, went back into his past a little bit more. That's where we first got the reveal that he had a son, Dakin. That was a big part of that series, unfortunately. But yeah, the start of the Wolverine family tree that just got ridiculous. The art was great.
Wolverine family.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, maybe I'll check that out at some point. All right, so
like, especially the early stuff, like, I didn't read all of when it got to Punisher Max, like, I didn't read all of that, but the stuff I did read was so good, and it was just such a good return to form for the Punisher, because this was right after that terrible thing where they were like, let's have him die and come back as like some kind of avenging angel from heaven, or
wasn't that like Marvel Knights or something? Wasn't that?
Yeah. Like a 4-issue limited series, and like everyone hated it. And so they're just like, please bring the Punisher back to being the Punisher. And they did such a good job.
I just want to grab comic book creators, just shake them sometimes. Just shake them. Like, everyone tries to be so creative and groundbreaking, and just tell good stories, you know, just tell good stories.
It wasn't even the end of that, because then later on they're like, hey, let's kill the Punisher again, have him come back as a Frankenstein, because so he'll be Frankencastle, get it? Like, oh my god.
Let's have him come back as a monkey. It'll be great. Is there anything else about this particular story in Cry of the Werewolf you would like to mention?
I can definitely see the flaws that you're mentioning. I definitely think they wrapped the story up a little bit too quickly, but I did like the characterization of Judge Dredd. I thought it was nice that he was willing to, you know, go out a hero, and really didn't even give much thought to the fact that he's going to die in this mission. Like, he wasn't even sad about it. He was just like, yeah, whatever. This is my job. This is the duty. And, so I don't know. I enjoyed it overall.
Yeah, again, it's you know, we shouldn't be too critical of them just because they're turning these things out every week. They're doing because of the way it's presented, 6 pages at a time every week. I'm sure that, like, if you told these writers to sit down and come up with a great story about Judge Dredd being a werewolf, I'm sure they would have came up with something different if they could have told it all in like one big issue or whatever. But so
yeah, you gotta have a little act break every couple of pages, like a good cliffhanger.
They're making deadlines. That's all they're doing. So. But overall, I didn't really care for the story much, but I did like. So I'll give it a 5. You know, middle of the road. That's all I can do.
Okay. I think I'm going to go a little bit higher. I really like the art. Story I was a little bit higher on than you, so I'm going to give it a 7.
There you go. Jank loves the Judge Dredd. So there is. And the other thing I didn't like about it is there was no, like, again, the first version we read, this like the satirical outlook, the humor, the cleverness. There's none of that here, you know. Just that one really bad joke at the end.
I mean, the Rocky 37, Mad Max 25, I guess. I
didn't even notice those. Yeah. When your best jokes are in the background, it's not really the best what you want to do. All right, there it is, the Judge Dredd. All right, Jack, we've got 1 week left of Shocktober.
Oh, boy.
I decided we'll do a character we're all familiar with. I think we know, but I don't know anything about her. So there's a big clue. And I am drawn to her, interestingly enough, just because, she doesn't like to wear a lot of clothing.
Oh, yep.
So next issue, we're going to be doing Vampirella, issue 38 from 1974. And yeah, basically all I know about Vampirella is she's like a vampire lady who wears very skimpy bathing suit outfit, basically.
I had no idea she was around since 74 or even before then.
Before
wow.
That, yeah.
That's
what I mean. I have no concept of this character because I think I just looked at her bio briefly, but I think it says she comes from a different planet or something. So I don't know. I thought she was just a vampire. So we'll get into the history of Vampirella next week here on the show. And I think in this particular issue, there's a mummy in it. So
oh boy,
I think that
all the major food groups of monsters here.
I think that finishes our punch card, and now we get a free hoagie because that's every monster. I think Dracula, Frankenstein, Werewolf, and Mummy. So there you go.
Big four.
What a Shocktober.
I think we delivered.
So, all right, that's next week, Vampirella issue 38. And again, if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. We appreciate the support. And until next week, don't get any jank on you.